Hi, what I thought I might like to do for a change is an under layout view instead of the usual, this is what a layout looks like, this is what's going on. Let's have a look underneath the layout at some of the wiring and, maybe you'll be interested in it. Certainly, I like looking under the layouts and some are easier to follow than others. This one, fortunately, has been wired up in a logical fashion, fairly logical, and therefore is not too difficult to understand. If you like this, then I will do some more layouts where it's a nightmare trying to work out what's happening. And I tell you, down at the Railway Club, we spend weeks and hours trying to work out what is happening with layouts. But here we go. Let's have a look underneath this little layout here. What is under my layout? Sometimes I like to see what's going on underneath a layout, and I can find that quite interesting. If you do, let me know. I'm going to do a little video of the things that are under my layout. First of all, let's just say that the main electrical supply into the layout is this white plug here, which goes to a multi-way socket here. And tapped off a multi-way socket, it goes to a key operated switch there, an AC transformer there, the purple wires out of the AC transformer to a bridge rectifier there. It's weird this is, so the power supply is spread out across to a tag strip where you have the electrolytic capacitor there. So your rectified and smoothed DC is available on that big tag strip board over there. Let's jump to look at some of the end component actuators, because as well as the rectification that goes on there, we also have AC. And we have two supplies for AC. That black connector block there supplies the uncoupling ramps, which I can show you on the surface. And the uncoupling ramps are operated by these solenoids here. So there will be switches providing the power to those solenoids for the uncoupling ramps, and we see 3 of them there. Now we've got some other solenoids. Let's have a look at them. Let's start with this one here. It's marked PT5, and we've got a classic solenoid point motor and a mini CDU, capacitive discharge unit there. And we've got this similar thing here, a CDU driving 2 solenoids for point motors. So we've got that one there. Point motor there without a CDU. That's an interesting one, isn't it? But what we've got is a double CDU there, or 2 capacitors. So that, I believe, supplies the power to that point motor and that one. There's a point motor there, which is not operating a point. You see the black thing that comes through the board in the middle there? That's a signal, and it's got 2 arms on it. So we've got 2 motors to operate the 2 arms. There's a signal there with 1 arm on it. We've got 1 solenoid operating an arm of a signal. So we've got 2 signals, 1 there and 1 there. If I pan back, then you'll see that there's wiring from each of those end effector components. And that wiring comes around and around and back and down to this tag strip here, and this tag strip just terminates those wires, and they disappear down a hole in the baseboard. And if I flip round to the other side, you'll see the bank of switches and push buttons which operate point motors. Push buttons, I think, are uncoupling ramps, and there's a section switch somewhere. Well, one's a crossover, and they're numbered. And I think there's also an isolating section. While I'm on this side, let's look at the other controls. So those are the controls for all of the actuators and track isolation. There's a timer which was added rather more recently to make it so it would run for a specific time after the pushing of a button. And then if I come up to the top, you'll see the handheld controller and a push button in a rather large box. Right, let's drop down and look at the controllers, because we had the mains going through there, generating AC over there, and that 16 volts AC came down at one point to here. Now, what happens is it comes out one side, goes round through a hole in the board, back here to a socket. So there's a socket there. It also comes out of there along that central spar, down there past those point motors to another socket on the end, which means there's two places you could plug in the controller. One on the side for front operating of the layout, and one here to operate the layout from the back. Only what I've got it set up for at the moment is it comes to the tag strip, this tag strip here, and the controller is wired in on a flying lead, just permanently attached to the tag strip. I think I might go back to putting a plug on the end instead of this, so that you can plug it in either at the back or at the side. But it was easy just to plug it into a tag strip, and it just about stretches where I need to operate it from. So that's the controller. Now what happens is you got AC, 16 volts AC into the controller, and then you're regulated and controlled 12 volts, up to 12 volts DC out. Okay, and that's orange and black wires. The main track feed is at the back on the loop. Orange, black one disappearing through there, a hole, orange through there. And then what we've got is some supplementary feeds. I think you just about see an orange wire disappearing down there to a section of track. We've got orange disappearing down there to some more track, disappearing down there to some track. And if I shoot across to here, see there's an orange wire disappearing through the baseboard there. So you've got several track feeds, some of which you switch. See the orange wires from the panel. Others are just to provide you with supplementary supply to the track. I'm pulling back now. It's a 6mm ply baseboard, framed all round with a diagonal brace of that same sort of framing. You can see the approximate size of the framing timbers. A straightforward cross brace down the middle there, and then pockets in the corners for the legs, which have been labelled as such. Now, what's this black thing here? This is a supplementary thing. I'll talk about the black thing and some other additions to this. See, there's a plug on there, into that power supply, out of power supply, up through there. It's a 4 amp, 12 volt DC supply. Don't need 4 amps, it just happened to be available. And that goes to that timer circuit. Remember the timer circuit on there? So that supplies the power to the timer circuit. The push button here, which comes down through there, and up to there, supplies the trigger for the timer circuit. And these wires here are the switched wires from the timer circuit, which come down and break the controller wire. So one controller wire goes in here through the timer circuit, and then it comes back to here. In other words, it disables unless the timer is set to be turned on, the power to the track. So that's the timer circuit, giving you a time that the track would run for after operation of the circuit. Now, is there anything else on here? There are some holes in the boards here. There, it's labelled farm, I think. There's another one over there. Oh, that one's labelled farm. That one's labelled, what's it labelled? Terrace. And so there's the opportunity there for me to put some light through into those holes to illuminate those buildings on the surface. And I've got plenty of power from the 12 volt DC supply if I wanted to do it with a DC illuminator of some sort. Now, so yeah, so from the switches on the switch panel to a tag strip under here, it gives an opportunity to do some fault finding and testing. A tag strip there, which is just an old a way of gathering again the power. And so that's it. You know, if I've not explained that terribly well, or if it's just way too confusing, you're going to have to ask questions. But we've got uncoupling ramps, a couple of signals, 4 solenoids operating signals, uncoupling ramp, uncoupling ramp, uncoupling ramp, point motors, and then some track feed. And that is about it underneath the baseboard of this layout. So hopefully a fairly clear way of wiring up the layout and managing to control it from the switches. I'm sorry I'm not able to identify exactly what all the switches are, but you can see they've been color coded and labeled, so I should be able to remember it if I operate it briefly. Thank you. Hope that's of interest. One thing I forgot to point out is down there, a little socket there, because there is an extension board that fits on to the end when it's installed, which provides a little bit of storage space for some sidings. So this is a little extension board that fits in. You'll see the jack plug there, which gives the AC power to a single point motor under one of those points. The other point is manual. That's where the point motor is. I think that's just a manual point, yeah. And track power is taken through the track itself, but we do have a couple of section switches here to isolate the tracks. So if you look underneath, there's the single point motor. The power goes in, CDU, and the point motor can be operated. And then we've got some track feeds and those switches to another tag strip where we could fault find it, and gives us that isolating. So that's underneath this fairly self-contained extension piece, which needs to be plugged in for the point motor to operate. It doesn't need to be plugged in through there for the track. We rely on fish plate connection. We rely on fish plate connection at the end to give us the track feed through there.